I was born at the correct time. When my group, the Shadows and myself, began in Britain, there was really nobody else in Europe. Elvis in America, Ricky Nelson, Jerry Lewis, Buddy Holly, but nothing this side. Now, 34 years later, I look back and think, yes, I must be one of the pioneers. They needed somebody who they would call the answer to Elvis. But after 1 year, I knew that I had to find Cliff Richard. I could not be Elvis. You know, rock and roll is not a tempo. Rock and roll isn't... It's a culture. Rock and roll is a whole musical culture. I started saying rock pop because it's easier for people to understand what you are trying to say. But for me, rock and roll is so big. And I like to be able to try little pieces of all of it if I can. Also, we were very afraid because in England, you know, for about, after the Beatles began in '63, from '63 to '65, they wrote in the newspapers, they only wrote stories of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. They wrote very little of Cliff Richard and the Shadows. But after a little while, you know, after about a year, in fact, I said to the Shadows, nothing is changing for us. The public was still enjoying our records. And you know, I have been singing for 33 years now. And every year in Britain, I have had 3 top 30 hit records. The only thing that I felt at that time was that it was dangerous for my career. Because nobody had said, no rock and roll singer had claimed to be a Christian. Somebody once said that rock and roll is the music of the devil. I say the devil never did anything good. And because rock and roll is good musically, we have to recognize that it must have been created by God. I use rock and roll to present God whenever I can. The duets that I've made have been very spontaneous. I never really planned them. The strangest, the most unusual duet I made was with Janet Jackson, who I didn't meet. I only met her 2 years, 3 years after we made the record. It was not a very good record. So I sang in London, and Janet Jackson sang in Los Angeles, and they put the tapes together. So it was a very strange record. So there is no reason why I do duets. It's just very good for an artist to become creative with somebody else. It's very interesting for us, and we always hope, of course, that it will be interesting for the public. I would like to believe that if I died tomorrow, then there would be many people who saw me and say, every time we saw him, we learned a little more about him. Because I think that is the art of performing. And it's my rock and roll art. I want to share a little